Today, we're going to be looking at the very best watches of the year. However, these watches were not chosen by me. I asked you to tell me your favourite watches of the year. Now, some of these suggestions are top tier, and some of them are going to get roasted. At the end of this video, I'm going to be giving you guys my personal top 5 watches of the year. So stick around to see what I choose. So the first suggestion is the Baltic Hermatique. This is the new field watch release by Baltic. One thing that I think Baltic do better than a lot of other brands is they create a really good structure to their catalogue. So I do think that it was natural for Baltic to head in this field watch direction next. It's not too on the nose like a lot of other field watch designs. €550 for this is a little bit steep, but you are getting an original design field watch with decent specs from a respected micro brand. I do think that the crown on this watch is a little bit confusing. I've never really seen a field watch have such a hidden crown before. I think it would look much more normal on a dress watch. But yes, I agree, this could potentially be one of the best releases of the year. Next, we have the Seiko SRP K17. Now, I like the look of this Seiko 5. I like the fact that they revisited that old Seiko 5 logo, and I like the vintage aesthetic and vintage vibes that this watch has. But I've got to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of when Seiko do limited editions. For me, it just seems like a bit of a cash grab. And calling this watch a limited edition, in my opinion, is a little bit sneaky, because Seiko are actually making 15,000 of them. And I think at £350 as well, I think it's overpriced. Considering that you can go and get one of the other Seiko 5s, one of the newer models, that has the exact same specs and the exact same movement, but those watches cost considerably less, I don't think that this one can be considered a watch release of the year. Sorry. Next, we have a brand that I am very much a fan of. Most of you will know Studio Underdog for their amazing chronographs. However, this year they did something a bit different. They released their first ever field watch. The look of this watch is absolutely beautiful. One thing that I can't unsee though, since someone told me, is that those two screws on the dial look like nipples. I like the different colorways that this watch comes in, and I just like that Studio Underdog kept that same sort of vibe that they had going on with the chronograph, and I think this was the perfect follow-up to that range of watches. So I do actually agree that this might be one of the best watch releases of the year. Now, somebody suggested the Tissot PRX chronograph. The PRX chronograph actually got released in late 2022, but one watch that did get released this year was the Tissot PRX Digital, which I think is absolutely shite. And it's fair to say that I'm not a big fan of that watch, considering that you can get a Casio that pretty much looks the exact same for $30. And I know there's a big difference in terms of the build quality and materials being used. The exact same look for $300 more. No thanks. Now, the next watch that somebody suggested is actually a watch that I reviewed recently. Casio finally made a Tiffany watch that comes with a steel case. Now, at the minute, this watch is still really hard to get hold of because, you know, scalpers. So don't be paying anything above retail for this watch. Trust me, it's not worth it. The watch itself is pretty good, but as usual with Casio, you get a folded link bracelet that rips all of your arm hairs out. It's a nice little release from Casio, and it's definitely going to have some fans. I certainly don't think that this watch is one of the best releases of the year. Now, somebody suggested the new San Martin GMT. Apparently, this new watch by San Martin is an original design, and personally looking at it, I can't see anywhere that they've stolen this design from. I think that it's a pretty good looking watch, and apparently San Martin have a really good build quality and a really good level of finishing with their watches. I wouldn't say that it's one of the best releases of the year. I think San Martin have got a long way to go before they can shake that reputation of just stealing everybody's designs, but big props to them for moving in the right direction. Another suggestion was the Tissot Sidriel. For just under £1,000, you're getting a big Swiss brand in a carbon case with 300 meters of water resistance. I think that's a pretty sweet deal, and I really like the vintage dial too. And I'll actually have to agree with this recommendation. I think this could be one of the best watch releases of the year. Well done, Tissot. Now, this next suggestion has either come from somebody who works at Swatch or Blancpain, because somebody has recommended the Blancpain Swatch 50 Fathoms. Listen, this watch is a lot of fun, and I think for somebody that collects luxury watches, this is probably a cool watch to have in your collection. But for affordable watch collectors like me, I think this watch is absolute trash. Now, I'm very much a romantic when it comes to watch collecting. I like the idea of keeping a watch for 20, 30, 40 years. Hopefully the watches even last longer than me. However, of course, this Swatch 50 Fathoms is made to be disposable. You'll get 8, maybe 10 years if you're lucky out the watch, and then you'll have to put it in the bin. And as an enthusiast, that just doesn't sit well with me. Sure, it's fun, but so's a £10 F91W, and I'd much rather be wearing this than that piece of junk. The next suggestion is the Timex Timex Marlin chronograph. Now, I've become a little bit of a hater of Timex recently, I won't lie, because I'm slowly starting to see past their rich history and seeing that their watches are maybe not as good as they used to be. For me, when you look at a Timex spec sheet, it's just full of disappointment. This Marlin chronograph is pretty good looking, but I think a basic quartz movement, an acrylic crystal, and 50 meters of water resistance for £180, I think that's a rip-off. You can get so much better for your money. Now, this next one I do completely agree with about being maybe one of the best watches of the year. The Longines Conquest definitely needed an upgrade. The design and fit was a bit chunky and a bit outdated, so when I saw this new release from Longines, I gave them a little round of applause. They've certainly modernized the design, made it look a lot cooler and sharper, and now this is genuinely a watch that I would consider buying. And the final suggestion from you before we get onto my picks is the Christopher Ward Moonphase. And well, what can I say about this watch? Yes, this is absolutely stunning. Christopher Ward doing Christopher Ward things. The Bel Canto last year, the Moonphase this year. What can't this British brand do? Yes, at £2,000 it is quite expensive, but you know, it's one of those statement pieces you'll have in your collection. And I am very excited to see what Christopher Ward do next year too. Okay, let's get on to my top 5 picks for the best watch releases of the year. Starting off, we have one of the best looking watches, in my opinion, of all time. This watch is called the Clive Cussler and it's by Doxa. But just look at that dial. It's almost like a compass or a world map. It looks super distressed and super vintage, like somebody's found an old scroll from like 300 years ago. That is one of the best looking dials I have ever seen on a watch. It's also got this distressed case finishing, which I also really like. I think the colours of the watch just look so good together. There's not many watches that sort of give me that butterfly feeling inside, but this is definitely one of them. Now, the next one is actually a watch that got released in 2022. However, it's only got released this year to Western markets. So even though technically it's not a 2023 watch, I'm going to include it. I was expecting the watch to be like okay quality, but then when I actually got it in hand and looked at the finishing and looked at the fit, I was so impressed. The movement inside is the only downside really, because it is a Miyota 8000 series, but it is golden in colour, so that makes it a little bit better. And it's really nice to see them using more and more automatic movements inside their watches, because eco drive's great, but let's be honest, us enthusiasts like mechanical. No, but seriously, I think that the Soyosa is one of the best releases in recent years. This next one is definitely a fan favourite that I think you're going to agree with. It was about bloody time that Bulliver updated the Lunar Pilot. It is nice to finally have a smaller Lunar Pilot at 43.5mm. I love the design of the Lunar Pilot and I love the story behind it, and it's nice that Bulliver listened and released a smaller version. But please, Bulliver, release one that's even smaller. But I do still think that this new blue and white Lunar Pilot is one of the best releases of the year. Next up, we have one of my personal favourites. Yema is a brand that has really grown on me over the last year or so. The new Yema Urban Field is absolutely beautiful. They didn't go with a boring field watch design like a lot of other brands do. They went with something completely different, and I have a lot of respect for it. I think that the dial on this new field watch is a lot of fun, but it still has a few nods to vintage design with that crosshair dial. The manual wind movement in the back is absolutely beautiful, and the watch is nice and thin like a field watch should be. I think that Yema is going to be making some big moves in the years to come, and some of the watches that they've released this year will be the catalyst for that. Now, this final one, I might have a little bit of recency bias with, but I genuinely think that this is one of my favourite watches of all time. Now, the Legend Diver by Longines is a watch that I've talked about before and that I really like. However, there was one big problem with the Legend Diver, and that's the two sizes that it came in. You had a choice of 36mm that didn't come with a bracelet, or 42mm that did come with a bracelet. So recently, when they announced the new Longines Legend Diver 39mm and the fact that it comes on a bracelet, yeah, I'm a big fan. There's not many watches that I look at and think I could just have that one watch and nothing else, but this Longines Legend Diver is one of them, and I genuinely think that this is wristwatch perfection. But what were your watch releases of the year? Let me know down in the comments.